No American tourists were harmed in the making of this podcast. As for the Japanese waitstaff, the final verdict is still pending.
Welcome back to No Ginger. I'm Samar.
I'm Ash. And let's get going. Samar, what is your no ginger this week?
Where to start? So, you know, Baskin Robbins or 31.
I do know Baskin Robbins, i.e. Satiwan.
Satiwan. We're having a big, festival.
Okay.
Where, you can try 10 ice cream scoops. And it was really exciting because
That's a lot of scoops.
Yeah, but you can take it home.
How big are the scoops?
Regular scoops. But it was a big deal because it was 1,200 yen. And you can get 10 scoops.
That's really so cheap.
Yeah. And you can try all their, special flavors and everything. So people were lining up like crazy. Mm. And, of course, I had to join in on the fun. But, I wanted to go try this with my friends. Now, I told the lady, can I get dry... First of all, I wanted 3-hour dry ice so that I could take it home.
Right.
But I asked, and they were sold out. I was like, okay, fine. Can I just have
dry ice?
Yes. They had one job. But I said, can I get ice, then the hour ice pack that I'm paying for later? Can I just pick up the ice after I eat a little bit with my friends and then take the rest home? And she was like, no.
You have to have it right now.
You have to take your ice cream with the dry ice. We will not give you the dry ice later. And me and my Japanese friend, we were like, why? I was just like, why? And the lady said, whatever. And it was just more along the lines of, we don't do that.
Okay.
And it was like, why?
I understand, okay, well, we have this rule. We've determined that the regulation is that we give you dry ice when you purchase it.
Yes.
But, on the other hand, how can there be no flexibility? It's not like you're leaving the store and coming back days later to pick up this dry ice.
Sit with my friends and eat
you just want to sit down, enjoy a little bit of ice cream, and then pick up the dry ice and go.
That's all I wanted. And they were like, no. And I was just like, why do you need to make this so complicated? Do you want me to melt with 10 scoops of ice cream between my hands? Why? And it was so funny because I had just taught my friend, what is it? Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. And she was like, that's such a you thing to think of. I'm like, no, this is a set phrase. It's not me.
No, that's an existing expression.
Yes.
And also it very closely matches a lot of what ends up being shogunai.
Yeah, but she was so impressed by it. She was just and then when this happened to us, she was like, oh,
we prepared for the worst. No,
we hoped for the best. Because we were so happy. Because originally the lady, she seemed like she was going to give it to us.
Yeah.
And then it was like, nope.
Actually, no.
No. So, my friend got to learn. My friend, I'm going to call her Ubu-chan. Ubu-chan got to learn that English phrase. And I got rejected by Japanese staff for getting ice.
Wanting 30 minutes between payment and receiving the ice.
I guess, to be fair, they're not an ice company. They're just an ice cream company that gives ice with the ice cream.
Yeah, but it's just so silly because it just feels that there's no reason why.
Yeah, my friend was also like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, as a company...
But unless they had a regulation set that's customers can decide later to take away, they are not going to have the creativity. That's how it works with so many businesses, is that it's here's something that I would like to do. I ate some of my food, I now want to take it away. And they're like, you can't.
Yeah, until COVID, you couldn't get anything taken away in Japan. So it was such a hassle. I guess Baskin Robbins in Japan has not caught up.
Clearly, No.
Yeah.
But so many things are like that. Like, unless there is a set regulation in place, you just can't do it. There has to be a precedent set.
Yeah, the
or
lady
the
does-
staff will simply just not, even if it's a perfectly logical thing you are asking for, if the precedent does not exist, the staff will not.
Yeah, the lady was just like, she also didn't know why, but she just didn't want to get in trouble. And I was just like, whatever,
Okay.
I'll try to eat as much ice cream as I can.
I guess I'll be eating all
for
of this
the
now.
price of a friendship. But luckily, the ice cream, I'm happy to report, did not all melt. I did not eat 10 scoops of ice cream in one sitting.
Oh, goodness.
I don't know what I was more concerned about. Eating 10 scoops of ice cream or getting it home.
Made it home, but yeah, that was my no ginger for the week. I was just like, oh,
Yeah,
Japanese
for sure.
customer service can be elite, but only in the prescribed
Right. It's very good.
guidelines.
Up until there's no precedent set for how to react to a situation, in which case it's some of the worst customer service you can experience.
Yeah, like I guess nobody wants to sit and eat with their friends and then take it home.
So
In Japan, I don't know.
I feel like a good point of comparison here, that like this has happened in Japan, but comparing like going to a Japanese hotel, a Japanese owned hotel, versus going to like Marriott. And you know me, and I love to stay in Marriott's.
Yes, I know.
Yes.
She has the nepotism.
I'm bougie, and I have family members who are Marriott associates. So, anyway, I love to stay in a Marriott. Having stayed in plenty of Japanese hotels and having like messed up, this happened in Kyoto. This was last year. My mom was visiting. I made a booking in Kyoto just at a regular hotel. I accidentally on this booking put 2 adults and 1 child.
There was
Is the child you?
The child was
Me, but I don't know who the second adult was. So you see where I messed up the reservation.
It's not for your dad.
I guess so. I'm the baby, please. Yeah, so anyway, the guy's like, oh, well, this is not your reservation because you don't have a child with you. And I was like, no, I've just made a mistake on the reservation. Like, I made it through booking.com or whatever. And he's like, no, the staff is like, you can't go to this room because you're meant to have a child with you. Like, the child is missing. And I'm like, no, it's a mistake on the reservation. And I spent a solid, 10 minutes arguing with this man before finally the manager was like, well, does her ID match the
That's
booking?
where I would think to go first.
It's what
It's
I literally said
First was like, here's, I handed over the ID. And first we have the whole issue of, he's like, well, I need to copy your passport. And I'm like, I don't have my passport. I live here, so I'm carrying a Zaidu card. Please do not take a copy of it. You do not need to. That's the rule. And anyway, so that part is fine. But then he's like, okay, well, where's the child? And I'm looking at him like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you know that I don't know?
What have you been up to?
Yeah, I was really like, I don't think I have any surprise news to share. Like, geez. Anyway, yeah, so there's no kid with me. I'm just with my mom. And yeah, finally the manager's like, well, if her name matches, clearly it's just a mistake on the booking. I do not know why this regular receptionist was so unwilling to accept that, as a human, I just accidentally booked a room that had a child in. I don't know. Compare that to going to a Marriott, go in, and I had made 2 bookings for myself, one for a Friday night, one for a Saturday night. I made the booking separately, so they were for different room types, even. But I just said to the staff, I'm actually going to be here for 2 nights. You can see that I have 2 reservations. Is it possible for me to just stay in the one room instead of having to change rooms? And they're immediately instead of being like, oh, no, because this is the booking, this is exactly what you booked, they were just like, oh, yeah, no problem. You can just stay in this one room for both nights. No issue at all. And of course I said, if there's availability. I understand, I had made the 2, if there was no availability and they couldn't move me around, that's totally fine. But immediately just being like, I made a mistake on the booking, can you make this adjustment? And they said, absolutely, no problem. Immediately changed the booking. And I was just like, this is so, Japanese hotel versus this like international hotel. Is conglomerate the right word?
Yeah.
It's just, while the customer service is very good, and the hotel that we stayed in Kyoto was really wonderful. I really recommend it. Do not mess up your booking on booking.com.
They will come for you.
They will.
You're a child.
They will not let you in. You're imagining. I was like, what do you want me to do? Go buy a baby doll? So, I mean, that wasn't this week, but I guess that at that time, that was definitely a no ginger.
Yeah,
Very much connected to just Japanese customer service. It's very good up until you fully did not meet the expected whatever
Yeah, it
rules
does
and
not
regulations
follow
they already have.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have a funny email for you, Samar.
I'm excited.
Yes. Okay. Well, I think you're gonna like
This one.
Does it have to do with customer service?
it. Does
Have to do with customer service. That wasn't even planned, but I do love, well, unless you planned that mentally, I don't know. All right.
anyway. Listen carefully.
I like matching sets.
Ooh, like for clothing or?
I mean, topics to match. Organization.
Organization.
Okay, here we go. Hi, Samar and Ash. Much friendlier than the last time.
Yeah.
I like
Thank
that.
you for including our names.
Ooh, feel loved.
I can't wait till people misspell my name. That'll be fun.
Sammer.
I am writing to get your opinion about whether this is a yes ginger situation or a no ginger situation. I work at a cafe where tourists often drop by. Recently, I encountered a particularly memorable customer, a gentleman whose enthusiasm for speaking Japanese was as lovely as it was incomprehensible.
Wow.
That's a drag. That's
Wow.
Just rake him across the coals. So he confidently rattled off his order in Japanese, but his grasp of the language is, shall we say, creatively interpretive. Don't get me wrong, I genuinely appreciate his effort. Really, I do.
I don't think you do.
So I noticed he
Spoke English to his friends and switched to English, hoping to clear things up. But no, he ignored me and kept speaking Japanese to me. Eventually, I could finally get his highly customized order. I'm sorry to tell you that this has happened to me multiple times, and most of these people are white Americans.
Oh, that's one for you, Ash.
Yeah, my people. Oh, could you?
They're only half my
Shocking.
people.
the
Caucasity of it.
Oh.
Could you perhaps give your fellow countrymen a nudge? This is my nudge. And suggest speaking the language you can actually speak. Sincerely, I don't get paid enough to be your Japanese tutor.
Damn, that's brutal.
that was violent.
I feel a little bit attacked. And not like personally, but just on behalf of... There's really two sides to this one.
We need to contact the American embassy.
Right, just put a travel warning. If you can't speak Japanese, don't.
Please help us out, Mr. Ambassador or Miss Ambassador.
Yeah, oh gosh. If they were tourists and this guy was just trying his best in Japanese, I want to applaud him.
So you think, like, is this yes ginger, no ginger?
Well,
Both? Am I allowed to say both? I don't think I'm allowed to say both.
You can't go neutral on the survey, Ash.
oh shoot.
I'm gonna give this one... I'm gonna say there's kind of no ginger to the specific situation.
I think there is ginger. I just don't think the Japanese wait staff will necessarily use.
So that's kind of what I'm thinking. Let's break this down. But in the end, I'm not convinced that there is going to be ginger in this situation. Okay. So hear me out. If I were working at a cafe and somebody comes in and insists, like, let's say I'm an American, but I'm speaking in Japanese, working at a Japanese cafe. Somebody comes in and they order in Japanese and I just can't figure out what they're saying. I, as obviously a foreigner, myself can just switch to English and they probably wouldn't think much of it because, oh, they're also a foreigner. I understand that in this situation, this staff, obviously being a Japanese person, says, oh, I've switched to English, but this person refused to, like, change to English with me. And I think this can happen because there's this concept of, like, a face filter, right? You're like, oh, well, I've walked into this cafe, I'm expecting to use Japanese, so I'm gonna do it, and I'm just not gonna hear anything but Japanese. I refuse to hear English. And the reverse can also be true. We sometimes experience where staff are like, oh, I'm struggling to understand, and you're like, no, I know I said that perfectly fine in Japanese, but they're just so, like, surprised.
Yeah, that.
So the face filter can be a very real thing that can get in the way here. But if I am working in a cafe and I tell the person, like, listen, I'm really sorry, I'm quite busy, I really need to take your order, can you just clarify it for me in English? Sure, they might be upset, but I'm going to get the order. I'm also in Japan, so I'm not working for tips.
That's a big one.
So sure, it's not great customer service, but it's also, like, not my job to wait for you to do your Japanese practice. I don't imagine that any Japanese staff member would be so bold as to be like, I'm sorry, I cannot understand you, and I'm in a hurry. And that is why I don't really think there's any ginger here. Because while, of course, you can express, and very kindly could express to somebody, like, I'm very sorry, I'm very sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you, maybe could you just speak up a bit? And I'm sorry, actually, I've been speaking in English quite a bit today, so my brain's not really doing great with Japanese. You could even make a bit of a joke of it. I just don't think that Japanese staff are going to take that step because, as we were saying earlier, it's not in the rule book.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's a little bit difficult because, like, often tourists, even non-American ones, are very upfront, and the Japanese can be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
Which causes, like, issues where, like, then Japanese people sometimes are ruder than the tourists, like, back, like, once they've exhausted themselves. But I think it's more interesting why, like, specifically this is happening with Americans.
I do feel that when it comes to Americans, okay, like, obviously we're both from the US, but I grew up in a one-language household, English, and you grew up in a bilingual household.
Yes.
Or even a predominantly Arabic-speaking household.
Yes, you saw Arabic.
So, that being the case, like, you came from already having an understanding of, oh, I'm going out and now I use English. At home I can use a different language. Like, you kind of already grew up in that bilingual situation, where I came from solely English is the one language that you use, that you have. And so I remember when I was younger and I started studying Spanish, that if I had an opportunity to use Spanish, I was really excited about it. Like, really willing to try. Because there was just no other opportunity ever. And that's where I think this is, like, why it's specifically white Americans. A lot of white Americans, particularly ones whose families have been in the US for a long time.
Because, you know, the US is so old. Joking.
Such a big baby.
Yeah, just a big baby.
So, since they have grown up in that, like, one language only situation, they don't necessarily recognize how much it takes to really use a second language.
Yeah, they don't really have any idea of, like, how much ego they're, like, showing when they are speaking. Like, they think they're better than they are.
Yeah.
I think when you grow up in a bilingual household, you often are destroyed by your parents.
You get humbled a bit more.
Yeah, you get humbled. There's a lot of, like, extra schooling. You have to give up, like, after school. Like, I went to after school. I went to summer schools. Sometimes, like, parents get really angry at you if you don't speak the language. So you're forced. I think a lot of bilingual children are often forced to speak two languages, and they don't always necessarily appreciate the experience until they're older, but it's kind of traumatizing. You're quite aware of the gap between you, because if your parent is like a native speaker and you are supposed to be a native speaker, you're quite aware of the gap because there will be problems.
Like, obviously we have a
change of terminology. Like, you're more of a heritage speaker than being a native speaker at that point.
Yeah, not anymore.
But here, I think
There's another element to this, which is the Jozu.
Yeah,
comment.
like
Those who are a person of color in Japan do not as often experience being jozued or being told that they're good at Japanese as often as white foreigners do. I think I can go in anywhere. Before I spoke Japanese, saying just like my order very simply, more because I had it memorized as a set of sounds rather than like knowing actively what each word was and really what I was saying, and would often get "nihongo jouzu desu ne," which is very kind. You think at the time,
yeah. It's a compliment, but actually,
so later you come to understand that, like, oh, actually, this is not really a compliment. This is much more of a well, you've tried. That was a creative interpretation.
That's very cute.
Yes, but it's really not always such a celebration of you doing a good job. And especially for a lot of men with their ego, they come in, they get praised for their Japanese. They take it very seriously, and so they can't understand that they might actually not be doing a good job.
Or that it's hard to understand them. Like, I've seen American white men get upset when people speak to them in English. And it's just like, especially if you live in a place like Tokyo or any of the big cities in Japan, getting upset about people speaking to you in English.
It's just so silly because so many people in Tokyo do speak English. And another time we can debate how different areas have a better representation of English speakers than others. But if you live in a big city and someone recognizes that you are an English speaker and they go, I'm going to speak English to this person, you shouldn't take it as an insult to your Japanese. It's not. It's just people recognizing, like, hey, this may be the easier language for us to communicate.
Speaking with your friends, like in that email,
that's
that
what I'm
person.
thinking. They've recognized this person to be
the staff recognized this customer to be an English speaker and was like, all right, cool. We're gonna use English.
I'm having problems communicating with you. I don't want to be rude, and I'm gonna speak to you in English. And then to refuse to switch.
That. I mean, for me personally, like,
if somebody approaches me and they're using English, I'm so excited about it. I do not have to use my brain.
Yes, I am excited. Well, I mean, in that regard, I'm excited to use English only if the Japanese person doesn't look like they're having a stroke.
Well, that's a whole other situation. Like,
but in that case, usually they're like, is English, and if you can follow that with no, Japanese is totally fine, and you can watch the relief, then you know that they're happy about it. But when they come up with confidence and approach you in English, and if you follow that with immediate, like, nope, let's just use Japanese, like, you can kind of see that they're like, but
also, like, this person, like, slowed down the service.
Yeah.
And for a highly customized order, right? And this is
which
like
is weird because you
don't customize orders in Japan.
Not that much.
Like, I'm wondering, I want to know about this person's
background. Like, if perhaps they were with friends, like, perhaps this customer lives in Japan, they were with friends who were visiting, and they kind of wanted to show off a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, I can understand it. I don't understand like, your friends are probably not paying that close of attention anyway. But if also they're coming in and they're like, oh, I'm going to customize this order a lot, that doesn't show to me that they're familiar with Japanese culture or Japanese norms. And so I'm wondering if perhaps they themselves are a tourist and they had just, they're like anime fluent.
I mean, for this emailer, you would hope that they were a tourist, because then they would go home. So you won't have to run into them again. Yeah. But if they are a resident, then
they really need to go to a proper Japanese class and be told that they are not comprehensible.
Now, I think personally, if I were the waiter and I had an annoying customer like this, I might just defer to the friends. Like, I would go around them and then speak to oh, did you order this? And you ordered that. And I think he ordered this. Cut him out of the conversation. And then wait.
Vindictive.
But I think that's a way to deal. Like I think social pressure still works.
It
on Americans as well. And like, if someone is trying to be the leader of this group in Japanese and they're being really annoying, then I would go around. Because obviously the whole group was speaking in English. And if this person is weird, you're gonna hope the other two are less weird.
You're just gonna hope that, well, even if he continues speaking in Japanese, his friends are gonna confirm it enough for you to figure out what he actually wanted.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. Anyway, I'm sorry to this emailer, but I'm not really seeing a ginger here unless you are willing to put away very polite customer service.
You can't be very passive with people who are being
Americans
like this.
do not respond.
I mean, you
well
can
to
be
passive.
Backhanded a little bit. Like, I think this is your strong point, Ash.
My expertise.
Please enlighten us.
But as you just said, actually, with just go speak to the friends instead, that is such a passive act. So I don't know, Samar, you might have some secret Southern Belle in you.
There is a reason I've never worked in customer service. I don't think I would survive, like, keeping my mouth shut. So
yeah, I've never worked in customer service in Japan.
I've just never done it in general.
But the experience in the U.S., I've worked in various restaurants, but there were very nice, like, country clubs and things. So it's just a really different experience. I don't think it's relatable. I don't think I would have any advice based on that to support.
Yeah, I think it would just be go to the friends, or, like you said earlier, like, making a joke.
Like, sorry, actually, I'm not very good at Japanese, so...
Or you could lie. You could lie and say, oh, I'm so sorry, I don't really speak Japanese.
Immediately, like, and then at the very end, after you've taken the order and they've confirmed it, they go, "Kashimarimashita."
I think that's the best thing.
That would be so
lie! I think that's the solution.
Was that the solution all along? The ginger to this is just lie about it?
Lie, just be like, oh, I'm also studying Japanese recently. It's really hard, isn't it?
That would be the way.
That's the only, like, little tiny ginger.
The shred of the pink pickled ginger on top of this here.
And then if he calls you out on it, and you're just like, but you just spoke Japanese. I'm just like, no, I didn't.
Just gaslight him.
Yeah, that's my solution.
Yeah, but he said he didn't want to become the Japanese tutor, so...
Yeah, he doesn't have to be. He's learning.
He's just a liar now.
He's also a Japanese student now.
All right. So, small shred of ginger on this. That's the final conclusion?
No, I think it's no ginger. I don't think this Japanese person is gonna take any of that advice.
No. All right. Well, then my original answer stands.
We're sorry. Americans are mostly monolingual, and they are unaware. They're just unaware.
Anyone who is American and has spent time learning Japanese, thank you for your hard work. You're doing amazing, sweetie. For anyone who does not speak Japanese and is in a situation where the staff do speak English, just Just let them.
And for those of you who are excited to try,
sometimes it's just not your day. You know,
it's not your day.
You can have good days with the language, and you can have bad days with language. Like, even I still do this. Where I'll be like, oh, I was really on it today, and then maybe the next day it's like, I can barely get out a simple sentence. You know, so you have your on days and your off days. Maybe it was just not his day.
Yeah, but don't be afraid to try. I think like this guy would have been fine if he tried, and then it didn't go well, and then the emailer switched to English. Then they should have just gone. So don't be afraid to try. Like, it's really important to try.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially
when you're learning.
Yeah.
The language teacher really came out of you there. Please try.
Don't give up.
All right.
This has been No Ginger. Our podcast is produced in its entirety by Ash and Samar. Special thank you to our emailer and to you, our listener. Subscriptions and DMs are welcome at No Ginger Podcast on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and wherever social media is found. Or send submissions to nogingerpodcast@gmail.com. If you've got a problem,
Put it on the podcast.